2022 was a phenomenal year for Marvel Champions. It brought us a ton of new heroes, a lot of new scenarios. It brought us X-Men. In this video, we're going to be talking about the best of the best. What were the best heroes, allies, cards, encounters, all of it. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Nelson All Over Cards. I'm Nelson and today we have a video talking about the best of 2022. So there's a number of categories that we're going to be walking through. I'm going to try and explain my rationale behind why my favorites are up here and what they are and why they are where they are. But kind of to give you a summary, we're going to have the best heroes, the best allies, the best cards from each aspect, the best encounters, mod sets, all of the good stuff. And all of that's going to be timestamped. So if you are curious about a specific category, you can hop right onto it. But we got a lot of content to cover, so let's dive into it. We're going to start it off with the thing that probably most everyone's kind of curious about, and that is the best new hero. So the first hero released in 2022, for the US at least, was Valkyrie. And then we ended it with the Storm Wolverine Mojo Mania pack. So that's what we're covering today. And if you watch my rankings video, you know that my favorite hero inside of those is none other than Nova, or Sam Alexander. He came to us earlier in the year, and he's a champion traded hero that's all based around events. He likes these wild resources, so a lot of the wild resources printed on the cards pay or count double for some of his cards. So for example, like his plot track card, it's a one wild resource for 4 damage or 2 normal resources for 4 damage. And the reason that I love him so much are his Unleash the Nova Force turns. He has the card that says whenever you defeat a minion or remove the last threat from a scheme, then you get to ready Nova and then draw a card. This also means you probably get to ready his wild resource generator on his table, the Nova helmet, and it just can lead to some incredibly powerful and so very much fun turns. I just revisited Nova recently when I went through the Mojo Mania pack, and him against Spiral was just an incredibly fun game. If you have not tried it, definitely check out Nova against Spiral, because it's just a interaction that Nova can just never stop. He just keeps going and going and going, and it can be really, really fun. But that's my favorite new hero, is Nova. Moving on, my favorite ally is a newer ally. So Nova came at the beginning of the year. My new favorite ally is Psylocke. She came in the Wolverine pack. And I love this ally because we have Confuse in red now. She's a 4-cost ally, 2 thwart, 1 attack, 3 health. And if this is wrong, then the picture's gonna be on the screen anyways. But and then whenever she attacks, you can remove a counter, deal an additional damage, and then confuse the attacked enemy. So we are starting to get more and more confused outside of Justice with like Professor X and now Psylocke in red. And I love this ability because we have a lot of heroes that really do want to roll down to their alter ego. They have a very strong alter ego kit, and now we're starting to get ways to do that outside of Justice. And especially with X-Men, X-Men have a real want and need with all their supports and everything that they have going for them to want to be an alter ego very frequently, and now we're getting cards that allow us to do that, which I love. But even further back, even not the X-Men, we have cards that, or we have heroes that want to be in alter ego, and it's great to revisit those and not need to play them in Justice to feel like you are contributing, are doing the best that you can, because with Justice you have the abilities to remove threat when you do roll down or confuse, and now we're starting to get other ways to do that. And very, very, very happy with some of the new releases, and Psylocke is my favorite new ally. It was kind of a toss-up between her and Professor X. It's a great ally, very similar to Nick Fury. When he enters play, you get 3 options. The one that I typically always am choosing is confusing the villain, and then 3 thwart, and then he gets he goes away at the end of the round, so it's a chump block. And so Professor X is really good. He's very, very powerful. I'm finding that I'm putting him in most of my decks, which is probably the reason he's not in here. I like allies. I like cards that have a niche spot where it's not necessarily an auto include, and that's why Psylocke kind of edged it out over I almost said Fury over Professor X here for me. this leads us into the next topic that I wanted to kind of talk about in here, and this is my favorite archetype that was added to the game. My favorite new archetype is Shield, which came out in the Sinister Motives box. Shield is primarily strongest in Justice, where we have cards like Homeland Intervention and Global Logistics, cards that allow you to manipulate shield supports and shield cards on the table, giving them multi-uses, being able to scry, remove threats, and then like the Shield Destroyer, Agent 13. I just love the combos. I love heroes where you can get built out, which is kind of anti-intuitive with my favorite new hero being Nova. I guess I just love all heroes in Marvel Champions, but I do really enjoy building out. And Spider-Woman, I ran through my Sinister Motives campaign with Spider-Woman with a shield. It was a leadership Justice, and that marriage right there was just so incredibly fun. I love the shield archetype. I think it works really well in solo and in multiplayer. It's a very strong archetype, but it does take a little bit of time to get set up. And so there's just a lot of combos, and as we get more shield cards printed, I'm hoping we do get more as we kind of continue on, especially shield support, so that we can kind of trigger the Agent 13 spam and all of this good stuff where Agent 13, after she activates, allows you to ready a shield support. And so I'm just excited to see how the archetype grows and expands into new cards. But if we didn't get any more shield cards right now, it's still a really interesting and fun archetype. In most aspects, I would say aggression is probably the least interesting, followed by protection. Leadership and justice have really strong shield builds, and Spider-Woman does, I think, it the best. In the next segment of the video, I'm going to go through each of the 4 aspects and talk about my favorite card that came out for each one of these aspects, and these are new to 2022 cards. So there were some cards that I really enjoyed that got reprinted in 2022. I'm excluding those. I'm just talking about the new cards. So let's knock some of these out. We're just gonna go in the order that I always go in, which is alphabetical order. And my favorite new aggression card is Hone Technique. This is a 3-cost upgrade that has two mental requirements to pay for it. And then basically what it does is that whenever you play a aggression attack event, if you use a mental resource to pay for it, then you get to add the cost of the event into the damage, which some crazy fun opportunities arise from that. You can put out some massive damage. Probably the most notorious is Dive Bomb being 7-1 becomes now a 11-5 damage, so 11 damage to one target, probably the villain, 5 damage to everything else on the table. Nova loves this card, by the way, and it just opens up some really cool builds and takes some cards that maybe were a little underpowered and allows you to use them in a Hone Technique build now, where now they're a little bit, they're more interesting and more intricate. I love the fact that they do require the mental resource, meaning that you have to kind of figure out how you're going to build your deck, with aggression being pretty heavy in the physical resources, and so you need some mental resources out on the table, that being either a wild resource generator like an X-Jet or a Quinn Carrier or Nova's Helmet, something like that. But it does require you to kind of be thinking about how you're going to get that kicker. So moving on to Justice, probably my favorite Justice card this year was Overwatch. So Overwatch is a upgrade that gets attached to a scheme, and it reads when it's an interrupt. So you do get to choose when you want to trigger this card. It says when any amount of threat is removed from the attached scheme, remove an equal amount of threat from a different scheme. So this allows you to solve a problem when you're just kind of flooded with side schemes, be that in a scenario that obviously is trying to do that with like maybe a Red Skull, or one way or another builds just got really interesting because you can throw that on the main scheme, and then you can thwart off the main scheme and then kill a side scheme with that same activation. Overwatch just opens up a lot of really cool and interesting ways to play the game and set you up for some really big turns. For like our Venom Goblin, no, it wasn't Venom Goblin, it was one of our 4-player games. I think Venom Goblin we were spamming problem solvers, but one of our 4-player games we had an Overwatch build to kind of take care of a lot of the side schemes, and that just worked really well because you sit it out there and then you would try and figure out exactly when to get that kicker and remove as much threat as you can, because you can trigger it off like a 1 thwart. You can, if you want. You can say, I'm going to trigger this, trigger Overwatch, remove 1 threat from another scheme. Or if you have like an Iron Brute and you remove 10, you can remove 10 from another scheme. Now in solo, that's probably not very common of occurrence where you have 10 threat on 2 different schemes, but in multiplayer, it does make it a really interesting play and kind of a risk-reward type decision where you're, do I trigger it now or do I trigger it later? And it's just a very satisfying and very cool card that kind of added to the one way or another build and showed uses in some of the other types of Justice playstyles. And so that's why I really liked Overwatch. If you're following along in alphabetical order, you know that Leadership is up next. And this is a card that came out in the, I think it was the Spider-Ham pack. Actually, I'm not 100% sure on that, but Clarity of Purpose is a new resource generator that basically gives you Venom's ability in blue. So it says you can attach to any friendly character as an action or as a resource. You can take the damage and generate a wild resource. So you can throw this on your hero, which is the most common use I've seen for this, or you can throw it on some like crazy powerful ally with a lot of health, maybe like a Rock Slide or an Angel. No, a Snow Guard, I'm sorry. A Snow Guard with like a ton of health built up, and then you just have something that you can spam and use that wild resource to either get the kickers for some of your other cards or just have a resource generator on the table. For a 1-cost upgrade, you're basically at that point trading like 1 resource for 1 health, and a lot of characters can really utilize that. It's a hit the ground running card. So if you draw it in your opening hand, you can utilize a lot of it. It's also not a requirement to use. So if you are down lower, if you're at like 3, 4, 2 health, you don't have to use Clarity of Purpose. You can let it sit on the table. It's also a great target for like Caught Off Guard or something that requires you to discard an upgrade or support you control. 1-cost Clarity of Purpose is a pretty good compromise for that. It's a resource generator, but it's also one that's easy to get back out, and it can be a little bit dangerous if you continually use it, which is another reason why I really like it. Leadership allows you to have a lot of allies on the table, so you probably can chump block to protect your health and then use your health as a resource for Clarity of Purpose. But there can be times where the villain surprise attacks you with like an assault or something like that, and you do run into some health problems. And I love the dichotomy there where it's like, okay, I should be fine. Like I should be able to preserve my health with the allies on the table, but there are times in this game, it's a very unpredictable game where it can completely backfire on you. You've taken 5 damage, you're down half your health to produce 5 resources, which is an excellent trade-off, and then you draw a gang up, and at that point you can get in some trouble. And so I really liked Clarity of Purpose. I liked what it did for leadership, which is already requires a lot of money, and there's a lot of ways to get money in leadership. I kind of wish this, I was kind of hoping that we'd see something like this and maybe a protection build or something like that, because leadership is already very strong. This is another really, really strong card, but I don't really care what aspect it came in. I'm glad we saw something like this where you're trading your health for another resource in the game. So Clarity of Purpose was really cool. And then we're down to protection, which is my favorite aspect. Protection got a lot of love this year, which I'm very, very happy with. And I still don't. I have on my notes here that I have 2 cards. I was like, I will figure it out in the video which is my favorite, and I'm still not sure which one it is. I'm gonna do one, my favorite card, and then I'll talk about the other one as an honorable mention. But on the spot, calling it right now, Flow Like Water. Flow Like Water is a 2-cost upgrade that says that whenever you play a defense event, you can deal 1 damage to an enemy. And this allows you to add on to damage in the like perfect defense or the defense event strategy, which is my favorite way to play. So you run all of the upgrades where if you don't take damage, you get to draw cards, remove threat, deal damage, all of this, and then you want to supplement those upgrades with events. And now those events can deal extra damage with Flow Like Water. And it allows you to run some lower cost events, lower cost being 0 instead of 1. So I guess like a Defiance now is not just cancel the boost icons, it's cancel the boost icons and deal damage. And so I really like the addition of the damage in here, where 1 damage does not feel like it's a huge deal until you realize that a lot of the damage in these types of builds comes from Retaliate, comes from electrostatic armor, energy barriers, these cards that deal like 1-2 ping damage, and the games could get very, very long. Flow Like Water almost effectively doubles, if not half, or 50% increase in your damage output for this type of build each round, which can really speed up the game, which helps that protection build, especially in those games where you don't want them to go long. Really enjoyed Flow Like Water. I like what it did for the protection build. Now, the honorable mention here is Repurpose. Repurpose is a zero cost event that kind of opened up a whole nother archetype in the green aspect. It says you discard a tech upgrade you control. You ready your hero and choose one of your stats, attack or thwart. You get plus X, where X is the equal to the cost of that card that you just discarded until the end of the round. So now, if you have like a energy barrier that has 1 charge left, you can, instead of using that 1 charge to prevent 1 damage and deal 1 damage, you can repurpose, ready, and now you get +2 to your attack or something like that. And if you have other ways to ready, which we're getting a lot more in green, like with what doesn't kill me, then you can stand up and attack. And since it's until the end of the round, repurpose can get a little crazy, especially if you have force field generators or something like that, or even like Iron Man, right? Like you don't have, it doesn't have to be a green tech card. You can use like Iron Man's cards or a plasma pistol or something like that that's outside of green to ready. That's another really big part of this, is you get a free ready and you get to continuously attack. And the more I'm talking about it, the more I realize I've never played this with Quicksilver, but I feel like Quicksilver would be bonkers with this strategy. And now after this video, I'm gonna go make a deck, because that sounds really, really cool. I don't know why. I've just never thought about using this with Quicksilver. But also, if you have a repurposed deck, let me know in the comments. So I did say that we were going to go in alphabetical order. This is not necessarily alphabetical order, but in my binder of cards, it does go aggression, justice, leadership, protection, basic. So my favorite new basic card, and we got a lot of basic cards. A lot of people are saying that, you know, basic's becoming a little bit too strong. I think I may be on that side of the argument, but I go back and forth. But Limitless Stamina and Unshakable, this is another 2. I guess if I had to choose one, it'd be Limitless Stamina. These are cards that came out in the SPDR pack, and they are there to help those heroes that have 14 or more printed health points. This helps solve some of the issues that Hulk has, and I really like that they are trying to fix, quote, fix older heroes or weaker heroes with some of these types of cards without just printing a new, hey, include this in your Hulk deck and swap out these 2 cards to help you know, make them better. But there are more than just Hulk that are 14-point heroes. So SPDR, Colossus, we got Drax. I'm sure there's some more. I think She-Hulk. Now I'm just gonna start naming the big characters. But anyways, what it is Limitless Stamina is a superpower card, costs 1, and it says ready your hero, which again, really helps Hulk, because so many of his cards require like a basic activation to trigger, or you can just get a lot more out of that really high attack stat. I'm thinking like Hulk, She-Hulk, Drax, all of these characters have some really high stats that Limitless Stamina allows you to spam a little bit and stand up and ready. And then Unshakable solves the other half of that problem, where it gives characters with 14 or more hit points steady, so it requires multiple status cards, 2 status cards, so either stun or confused, which can be feel bad if you are playing Hulk and you get stunned, because Hulk is all about attacking. And now it takes a little bit more to stun Hulk, which I think is just an excellent include, an excellent design space. So those are my favorite basic cards. We got a ton of basic cards. I'm not gonna go all into them, but I mean, Champions, Web Warriors, and X-Men all really like that basic, those gray cards. And so there's just a ton of them. You can probably pick any one of those and totally see the argument of why one of those is going to be your favorite. Alrighty, so let's move into the final section of this video, where previously we've been talking about like heroes and player cards and everything that the player controls, and now I'm going to be talking about some of the encounter sets and mod sets and some of my favorites that were printed this year. We did get a lot of really cool mod sets and a lot of really cool encounters this year. I think the design team is kind of finding their stride. Not saying that the old ones were bad, but they've found their stride in making interesting, not complex scenarios. And I think the epitome of this is Project Wide Awake from the Mutant Genesis box. This is where you're fighting Sentinels, and it feels like they kind of took Taskmaster and made it better, and they combined it with a better Collector 1, which Collector 1 is probably my least favorite scenario, and so seeing that type of design where it kind of negates a playstyle, and Project Wide Awake being ally chump blocking. You have a very, very hard time if you are chump blocking because they go under Operation Zero Tolerance. Once you reach a certain level at Operation Zero Tolerance, you lose the game. It prevents the very, very strong strategy of chump blocking. So you have to figure out another way to solve the problem, which I really like. Also, you have these abduction protocols, so you are going through finding these side schemes. When you defeat them, you get a new ally, and so it's just a very satisfying gameplay. I really like how they are making you use your allies for something other than chump blocking, and then you have to figure out how to defend. It's really cool to approach an encounter a different way, rather than just like, okay, we're just getting beat over the head. And I think Project Wide Awake did that so well. I think Mutant Genesis did that really, really well. I really enjoyed most, if not all. No, I enjoyed all. Sabretooth probably being my least favorite in the Mutant Genesis box, but just really cool box. But Project Wide Awake takes the cake for me. Really like that scenario. And then we're gonna end the video with my favorite new mod set. And this year we got a lot of new mod sets. They've continued to do, or did they start? They either started or they continued adding mod sets in the back of some of the hero packs, which I really like. And incidentally, my favorite mod set does not actually come from the back of a hero pack, but it does come from the Mojo Mania pack. Mojo Mania is the best scenario pack that they've done so far, I think. It's basically a mini campaign, but it comes with 6 new mod sets that are all different TV genre themed, and my favorite of those is fantasy. So each one of these mod sets has a different environment and side schemes and minions and just different ways of playing, and they all feel very unique, but fantasy is fun. There's not really a better adjective to describe it, because like the environment says that you get +1 hand size, and then there's an amplify icon on the table, and so it's just a cool way to change that. So now you're rolling in, you feel more powerful, but you're also taking on a significant bigger risk. There are like these side quest things that you can do where you get rewarded when you take them down, and then you can fight a dragon. And it's just a really, really cool and well-designed modular set that I've enjoyed playing in both the Mojo Mania campaign as well as other encounters. Those mod sets are not locked into the Mojo campaign. You can play them outside, you can play them with any of your encounter decks, and fantasy feels like one that I'm just going to have a ton of fun. I have had a ton of fun, and I will have a ton of fun in the future playing more fantasy. So that wraps up 2022 in the world of Marvel Champions. Fantastic year for Champions. Really, really happy with what they've been putting out. I feel like the designers have really started to find and hone in on some excellent ideas, and I'm just really excited for what 2023 and beyond has to bring to this game. I've really enjoyed making content this year for the game. I hope you all enjoy it as well. But I do appreciate you all so very much, and honestly, like, I could not do this without you. So thank you for hanging out. I am curious about what your favorites are, so go ahead and drop in the comments what your favorites, heroes, mod sets, all of them. Answer all of the questions if you can. What your favorites of X that were released in Marvel Champions this year. I'm really looking forward to reading and seeing what you have to say about those. But yeah, just drop those in the comments and we'll chat about them. because there's a lot of content, and so I'm excited. I went through every single card that came out this year to generate these lists, and it was pretty significant. But anyways, I feel like I'm just rambling at this point, so thanks for hanging out. If you enjoyed this content, like and subscribe, all of that good stuff. I am not going anywhere. I'm still going to be live streaming. I'm still going to be making videos in 2023, and I'm looking forward to it, and I will see you there. Peace.